Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Well, this time we're going way, way back to ancient Israel, like before they even had a king, to explore a story from the book of Judges, chapter 20 to be exact.
Judges, huh? That's one of those books in the Bible that a lot of people maybe haven't really dug into.
Right, but it's actually packed with drama and intrigue. And violence, too, honestly.
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty raw look at that period.
Exactly. And the story we're focusing on today, well, let's just say it has some moral dilemmas that feel, honestly, shockingly relevant even thousands of years later.
Timeless, as they say.
Okay, so to set the scene, we're talking about a time when different tribes in Israel were constantly, like, vying for power,
Yeah, it was a pretty turbulent period, not a lot of centralized authority.
which, as you can imagine, led to all sorts of conflicts.
Mhm.
And chapter 20 of Judges throws us right into one of these explosive situations.
Definitely explosive.
So it all starts with a truly horrific crime.
Buckle up, folks.
Okay, so we have this man identified as a Levite.
Which basically means he was part of, like, a priestly tribe dedicated to religious service.
Right, so this Levite is traveling with his concubine, and they need a place to stay for the night. They end up in the town of Gibeah, which belonged to the tribe of Benjamin.
So far, so good, right?
Not so much. Because offering hospitality to travelers, well, that was considered a sacred duty back then.
Absolutely. Huge no-no to mistreat someone who comes to your town seeking shelter.
And yet, the men of Gibeah, well, they violated that custom in the most appalling way.
Yeah. This is where the story takes a very dark turn.
They attacked the Levite's concubine, and she died as a result of the assault.
Brutal.
Absolutely brutal. And the reaction from the other Israelite tribes, well, it was immediate and fierce.
Understandably so.
They were furious, right?
Okay.
This crime had happened within their community, and they demanded justice.
And they meant business?
Totally. I mean, get this. 400,000 armed men from the other tribes gathered at a place called Mizpah.
400,000. That's like their whole army, pretty much.
Right. It's a powerful demonstration of their collective anger, like their determination to see those responsible held accountable.
It's almost like an ancient version of a massive protest or a social movement.
Right. Like they were drawing a line in the sand.
No more.
Exactly. And they presented their demands to the tribe of Benjamin, basically. Hand over the guilty men, and justice will be served. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
You'd think, but that's not what happened.
Not at all. And this is where the story takes a really unsettling turn. Because the tribe of Benjamin, instead of complying, decided to protect the perpetrators.
Yep. Tribal loyalty over justice in their minds.
Wow. So they essentially escalated the situation from a localized crime into a full-blown civil war.
It's a reminder of how quickly conflicts can spiral, when compromise feels impossible and everyone's digging in their heels.
And this wasn't just some minor skirmish, right? The battles that followed, they were brutal and incredibly bloody.
Like, seriously devastating.
On the first day of fighting, 22,000 Israelite soldiers were killed. And on the second day, another 18,000.
Those numbers are just staggering. A whole nation tearing itself apart.
Exactly. And it really highlights how deeply ingrained that tribalism can be. But what's also kind of fascinating is that even in the middle of this horrible conflict, the Israelites, they still felt this need to seek guidance from a higher power.
Yeah, it's interesting.
After those two losses, they were clearly shaken, looking for answers.
Right.
So they turn to God, seeking direction, and they receive a new battle strategy.
Divine intervention, huh?
Right. But, I mean, this idea of seeking guidance in times of crisis, it's something that resonates across cultures and throughout history, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's faith, or personal values, or just looking for wisdom from people you trust, that need for guidance when things are tough, it's just human. So they go into battle again with this new strategy and, well, as they believed, with God on their side.
Yes.
And they won. The Israelites defeated the Benjamites.
But I'm guessing it wasn't a clean victory.
Not at all. Not at all. The tribe of Benjamin was almost completely wiped out. Their cities destroyed. Only a tiny fraction of their men survived. Just 600. They managed to escape into the wilderness, but the rest.
It's a chilling reminder, isn't it? That even when you're fighting for justice, vengeance can be just as destructive.
Yeah. It really makes you think about that whole question of, did the punishment fit the crime? I mean, a few guys in Gibeah commit a horrible act, and almost a whole tribe gets annihilated.
It's that idea of collective responsibility, right?
Exactly. Holding a whole group accountable for what individuals did. It's something we still struggle with today, for sure.
It makes me think about, like, how we hold corporations accountable for doing something unethical,
Hmm.
or even, nations dealing with war crimes. Where do you draw the line?
It's tough. No easy answers. And
Yeah.
this story, well, it doesn't offer any simple solutions either, but it definitely makes you think about these really complex issues of justice and accountability in any society, really.
And it makes you wonder, what happened after? I mean, wiping out an entire tribe, almost.
Yeah.
That must have had some serious consequences.
Oh, yeah. Later in Judges, you see the Israelites kind of expressing regret. They realized they went too far in punishing Benjamin.
So they felt remorse.
They did. And they actually take steps to try and, like, repopulate the tribe.
Interesting.
Yeah, it shows they understood that their strength as a nation, well, it depended on all the tribes being strong.
So they came to understand that their actions, even though driven by a desire for justice, had created a whole bunch of new problems.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder to think about those long-term consequences. Whatever we're doing, whatever's motivating us, the impact lasts.
Definitely. And this story, I don't know, it really pushes you to look inward too. Like, if we were back there in that situation,
Yeah.
what side would we be on?
Ooh, that's a good one. Would we be demanding revenge, or would we be urging everyone to calm down, find a different way?
Because those lines between right and wrong, between justice and just plain vengeance, they can get blurry.
Absolutely. And we face those dilemmas today, too, don't we? Not with swords and sandals, maybe, but still, those moral choices.
You see echoes of this ancient conflict in everything, like modern-day social justice movements, debates about corporate responsibility, even just personal conflicts.
Yeah. Just like the Israelites were looking to God for guidance, we're all searching for something, some source of wisdom to help us figure things out.
Totally. This deep dive into Judges 20, it reminds us that wanting justice, struggling with how to hold people accountable, those are things people have always dealt with.
And seeking guidance when times are tough, it's all part of being human, right?
For sure. It's a story set thousands of years ago, but the lessons, they're still relevant today.
Mhm.
Really makes you think about the choices we make and the impact those have, not just on ourselves, but on everyone around us. It really is incredible, though, isn't it? I mean, how a story from so long ago can still make us stop and think about, like, big questions of justice and just what it means to be human.
Right. These ancient texts, they're like a mirror, reflecting back some deep truths about us and the societies we build.
So, to recap this wild ride we've been on,
Mm.
we started with that brutal crime, right? The one that set everything in motion.
And all that outrage, the anger, it sparked a full-on civil war, a nation divided against itself.
And the Israelites, they were trying to find that balance, weren't they? Between pursuing justice and, well, not becoming consumed by vengeance.
Yeah, they were wrestling with their faith, too, trying to figure out what God wanted them to do.
And ultimately, it wasn't all about just punishment and revenge, was it?
Nope. Later in Judges, you see them realizing they need to rebuild, to restore what was broken.
I remember you mentioned that earlier. They tried to help the tribe of Benjamin recover, even find wives for those surviving men.
Yeah, it's like they understood that even after all that destruction, they still had to find a way to come together.
To move forward as a nation.
Exactly. It shows, I think, that even in the darkest times, there's still that possibility for hope, for reconciliation.
Which, honestly, is kind of a beautiful thought. So, wrapping up this deep dive into Judges 20, what are we left with?
I think it shows that these questions about justice, accountability, seeking guidance when things are tough, they're not just ancient history.
They're things we're still dealing with today, in our own lives, our communities, our world.
It's a story that pushes you to look beyond those simple answers, to really grapple with the messiness of being human.
And to consider the impact of our choices, not just in the moment, but for the long haul. Because those choices, they have a ripple effect.
For sure. And maybe it inspires us to keep striving for that world where justice and mercy aren't at odds.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and, as always, keep seeking those deeper truths that connect us all.